Hey guys, Yoni here. Today's episode of Geek Slam podcast, I've got a special guest, Purav, from PD Talking Tech and PD Tech HD. Do you want to say hi, Purav?
Hey guys, it's nice, happy to join Yoni's podcast.
So, yeah, sorry I haven't been doing a podcast the past 2 weeks or so since the first one, but there's been some complications, and I did actually get a new mic anyway, so the audio should be good. So, Purav, do you want to say what we're going to be talking about this week?
Alright, so we're going to be starting off by talking about the new iPod Touch, the 5th generation that Apple announced 2 weeks ago. We're also going to mention rumours about the next Nexus device, which could possibly be next month. And we're going to round off talking about S3 getting the Jelly Bean update.
So, yeah, we're going to be talking about that stuff. So, first of all, the iPod Touch, you're actually going to get one. You've pre-ordered it, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, 32 gig.
So, that's pretty cool. Isn't that the minimum, 32 gig?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was more than enough storage. So.
That is. I've got a 16 gigabyte iPad 2, which does, I mean, the apps take up a lot because it's an iPad. It's twice as big as the general iPhones are, especially now with the 4-inch screen. So, I mean, and I've still got like 10 gigabytes free, and I've got like 10, 15 apps. So, it's good. So, that'll be plenty for you.
Yeah.
I actually did an article on the 5th gen iPod Touch with my opinions. If anyone wants to check it out, there'll be a link below the podcast description. And yeah, what do you think about it then?
I think it's like, if you've got a 4th gen, then there's not that much real reason to upgrade unless you want the bigger screen and better camera. But if you've got 3rd gen, like I do currently, then it's definitely worth upgrading because you're finally getting a Retina display, which is the main thing that I'm looking forward to, as well as the back camera. Because iOS 6, when they showed it at WWDC, it wasn't that anything major or anything like really like wow, this is the thing to upgrade your device for. So iOS 6 is not like a real reason to upgrade, but the back camera, the 4-inch display, and as you said earlier when we were Skyping, that the new iPod Touch has the exact same specs as the iPhone 5.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a reason to upgrade.
I was actually thinking I did actually take an iPod Touch with me on holiday for 2 weeks in July. Not my own iPod Touch, family members, but I really thought it was good for listening to music, even though the battery on it was terrible. The specific one had battery problems, though, and I just hated the screen, though. Just the screen, how small it was, how bad the applications on it were. And I just had no idea how people with iPhones managed, because I'd come from an iPad. So it really struck me as confusing how many people can use an iPhone like that with a tiny screen. So, I mean, with the new iPod Touch, the main advantages, of course, are the camera. I think the front-facing camera is HD now, same as the iPhone. I think the iPod Touch Loop is clever because it holds the wrist strap that's sold by Apple. We don't know if it comes in the package or not, but it's probably going to be separate anyway for a high price. But I think some of these features, like the back-facing camera, which it records 1080p video, it's the same as the new iPads. So I think it's a really great feature. The camera, Siri, the new front-facing camera as well, the new design, the bigger screen. I think it all amounts to a really nice device, and if you've got a phone like an iPhone already, or if you've got an Android phone and you want the best of both worlds, it's better to get this than the iPhone 5.
I really like the new design because, I mean, the back of the iPod Touch 3rd, 4th and previous ones before it like scratch and smudge really easily because it was a shiny back, whereas this time they've gone with like a brushed aluminium. So
yeah, it was originally just shiny and horrible.
And the colours look really nice as well. Like, you've got a variety. They look quite cool. So
which one did you order? The blue?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would get the blue. And I like how the front is white as well, the front plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
So, like I said in the article, I mean, and I just said a minute ago, I don't even like the iPhone 5 as much as I would prefer to have a Galaxy S3 or just another high-end Android phone along with this on the side. There's not a lot of point getting an iPhone 5, especially now with the new iPod Touch.
I mean, when the iPhone 5 like officially came out, Friday, like there were loads of people that queued for it, like, as normal Apple sheep people do, but like there's nothing really breakthrough about it. Like, even at the announcement there was no like one feature that you'd be like, oh, I must get the iPhone 5 now. Like, most people are probably only getting it just for the better camera and maybe iOS 6 and the bigger display, but it's still anything major, and Apple's still like sort of playing catch up to Android because we've had 4 4-inch or bigger screens for ages now.
Yeah, we've
So
been talking earlier. We were just talking before we started recording, and we were just saying the iPhone 5. It's not that breakthrough, especially the article I did on the Galaxy S3 versus the iPhone. I actually said the Galaxy S3 would be my preferred product. The iPhone 5, it's just caught up with all the other products now. There's nothing better in it than a Galaxy S3. The screen's still smaller. The cameras aren't as good, or they're just basically the same. The software isn't as good anyway. And the way that Apple's been playing catch up now, things like LTE, the screen, we've seen it all before, and it's not really a new phone. It's just the design is just nicer.
I mean, the thing is that Apple doesn't really innovate anymore. What they're
No.
doing is they're basically taking ideas from other companies. Like with the iPhone 5, the two-tone back design, we've seen that in HTC phones. So they've obviously looked at that and thought, like, how can we sort of implement that?
Yeah.
And there's nothing like with the original iPhone, that was a complete revolution. That was a whole like paradigm shift in technology, and Apple really set the bar. But now they're just more focused on patent trolling, if you will. Like they're just suing
Yeah.
people and just trying to,
They're
still
just
make
trying to
everyone
get
buy
more
their
money,
products.
and that's how
Yeah.
they operate. They're a company that aims for money, really. But the thing is that they're not their products. I mean, since the past year, when unfortunately Steve Jobs died on what I think it was October 6th, 2011. It was a sad day, but since then, and even since like late August of 2011, when he wasn't the CEO anymore and Tim Cook stepped up as the CEO, we haven't really seen anything new. And a lot of people have been saying that it might be, Tim Cook's fault, because what have we seen in the past year? We've seen, since Tim Cook started, the iPhone 4S, which was basically the same as the 4 with a spec
Yep.
bump. We saw the new iPad, which was basically the same as the iPad 2 with a spec bump. We saw the Retina MacBook Pro back in June at WWDC, which was basically a normal MacBook Pro but thinner with a spec bump basically and a few less ports. And I actually think it would be better to get a normal MacBook Pro unless you're like a really power hungry user. And the iPhone 5, which is basically the same as the 4S except it's taller, it's got a different back. And the camera's been moved, and it's got a spec bump. So we haven't really seen Apple being innovative. And hopefully, when we get to see the new Macs or whatever the newest products that are going to be come out, when we get to see them, hopefully there will be a big improvement there.
I think that Apple are really getting desperate because it's like with the first iPad, they didn't have any cameras. So with the iPad 2, that was the standout feature.
Yeah.
And whereas with this time, people expected the iPhone 5 to have NFC because it would have worked well with their passport feature and stuff, but they didn't do that. So I can pretty much predict that with the 5S, it will probably have NFC if they call it the 5S.
It will probably be just an iPhone 5 because even though everyone complains that it's basically the same phone as the last one and then there's a new one, that's how Apple worked. With the first gen, it was just iPhone. Then there was the iPhone 3G. The 3GS was basically the 3G, but a lot faster in its time, and it was just spec bumped. Then the 4, then 4S, so now we're on the 5, which is actually the 6th gen of iPhone. It's confusing, but now we're on the 6th generation of iPhone. For the 7th gen, maybe we're going to see the same version, but with NFC, maybe updated cameras, updated processors, and stuff like that.
Yeah, but nothing major,
Yeah.
I don't think. But going back to the iPod Touch, like I think, yeah, I really do see more people going for the iPod Touch than the iPhone 5 anyway. Like as you said, keep it as a secondary device to either an iPhone or a high-end Android phone,
Yeah.
and you're good to go. Like just use it for music or even apps and stuff. So
I'm not happy with where Apple is right now. I mean, I've stopped wanting a Mac more than a PC because PCs you can either spend £500 or £530 even for a Mac Mini, which is their lowest end computer, and that's still expensive for a computer, or you could pay £500 for a mid-range gaming PC, or you can just custom build one. And
that's true.
And with the cheapest MacBook, the cheapest laptop they sell is £800, and the MacBook
I mean,
Pro is expensive.
one thing I will admit about Apple is like their products are really expensive, but they are designed very well and they do last very long. Like they've got really good materials and stuff. Like MacBooks set the whole bar with what do you call it, unibody design kind of thing.
And that's
now
how
you
the
see
Ultrabook was born.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, they're good in that way, but it's just that they rip off people kind of thing. Like they charge way too much,
Hmm.
and like their factory conditions are appalling and stuff like
Yeah,
this. They
I've
don't really
seen.
care about their workers.
They do.
So
They did release a report a couple of months ago at how they've really improved the workers. But the thing is, it's not Apple's fault completely with the factory. It's Foxconn. But I would prefer to spend £500, or even if I was going to get an iMac for £1,000, it would just be better to spend that much money to get a high-end custom-built PC, which would run everything so much better than an iMac would. And it's just too expensive, if I'm honest. Even though it's got nice hardware, you can get a custom-built PC with similar hardware, and it will run everything faster. And with the phones, the iPhone 5 starts at £530. You can
yeah,
get a Galaxy S3 cheaper, which does the same, maybe even more. So I've completely stopped being an Apple fanboy, especially after they started like suing Samsung. I know they've had patent wars with Nokia in the past, like 2008 and 9, but since 2010 they've just been suing the crap out of Samsung, and it just got ridiculous. It's just got
yeah.
ridiculous.
I mean, they what? They got $1 billion from Samsung. I can
One
see them.
billion, 51 million, and something like $600,000.
I mean, their Q3 profits when they come out, or Q4, whatever you call it, like when they come out, it's just going to be, most of it will be due to that 1 billion.
No, that doesn't, I don't think it's going to count because it's profits. It's not like the amount of money they've taken in, because they do take in a lot of money from other things, but most of it is profits. But they are going to make a lot of money off the 5 million iPhone 5s they've sold in the past weekend.
Yeah, and it's only been what, 3 days now?
3-4 days.
That's crazy.
I mean, I was going to go and check it out on Friday, but the hype was so much. Like, it's been just so much that you can't even get to an Apple store. I mean, on Friday, Saturday, and yesterday, it was just so bad you couldn't get to an Apple store, go in and check it out. So I'm going to probably go tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to go today, but the weather was quite bad, wasn't it? So.
Yeah, I was planning to go today, but I've been at home all day. Otherwise, I do really like the iPod Touch. We've really gone off topic. We've stayed on the topic of Apple and the iPhone and stuff, but we're meant to be talking about the iPod Touch. But I do prefer the iPod Touch over the iPhone. Originally, when it was you had the choice between the iPod Touch 4 or the iPhone 4S, I would have just gone with the 4S because there was so much. But now the iPod Touch has caught up in terms of specs, and it's pretty much on par.
I mean, I'd say, like, just to round off the iPod Touch point, was like it's one of the best music playback devices kind of thing. Like there are some equivalent, like for the Android there's a Galaxy player and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's just it doesn't work as well. Like the UI is not as good for music and stuff
No.
like that. Like
The Galaxy player runs just basically the same thing, whichever version they've got. I don't think they made one for the S3, but they made one exactly the same as the S2, one exactly the same as the Note, same hardware and everything, except it just didn't make phone calls or make texts. And the thing is with the iPod Touch, it's like the iPhone, but it's its own product. It's not the same the way Samsung's done it. It's really confusing. A couple of months ago when I went to check out the S3 in the Samsung store, I did a hands-on video. I also got to check out the other products, and they're just so confusing. There's like 3 or 4, maybe more than 4 of each product. So with the Galaxy S3, there's the UK version, there's the international version, and there's like the Verizon version or something like that. But the other ones, there's just so many versions of it that you're just confused.
I mean, I don't know. Going back to like the iPod Touch, it's sort of like a cheaper way to experience iOS in a way. So it's still a portable computer in your like pocket kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not as expensive as the iPhone, but it does pretty much the same things.
Exactly.
So I would like, as a final kind of point, if you've got a 3rd gen, you should definitely upgrade. If you've got a 4th gen, then it's up to you if you really want to, just for the bigger display and better cameras and stuff.
But with the 4th gen, you will definitely feel limited because the camera is 0.7 megapixels. It's not even a joke. The back camera is 0.7, and I don't even know what the front camera is. But now it's up to 5 megapixels, 5.3 megapixels.
Yeah, on the back.
And it takes amazing pictures. Like, it's the same as the iPad 3, so if you've got an iPad 3 or you know someone that's got one and you're happy with the really good photo and video quality, I mean, if you want to take pictures on an iPod Touch, definitely go for it.
Shall we move on to talking about the next Nexus now?
Yeah, I think we should. We've spent enough time with this whole Apple thing.
So the next Nexus,
Yeah.
well, we know that like the current Nexus is obviously Galaxy Nexus
Yeah.
made by Samsung, and the last two generations have been made by Samsung. So
Yeah.
this time, what do you think? Which manufacturer do you reckon they'll go with?
I'm not sure. I mean, the Galaxy Nexus is one of the nicest Android phones I have ever used. I haven't actually had one, but I've been able to experience it. I've been able to use it in stores, and the fact that it's like the Nexus 7, it's got stock Android, no skins. I'm not sure if it's getting Jelly Bean. I think it is, but
It's got Jelly Bean already,
has it?
I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you can also always just route it to get Jelly Bean on there anyway. I think it runs Jelly Bean exactly the same, possibly better than the S3 does. And yeah, so it runs stock Android. It's one of the nicest phones, one of the fastest Android phones I've seen as well. So I'm not sure how Google's going to improve it, but it's nearly a year old anyway.
I mean, I really, like as I was telling you earlier, when they did Google I/O and they showed the Nexus 7, I thought that that was it. That was the reference point for a Jelly Bean device, because the
Yeah.
Nexus devices are meant to be sort of like a what's the word now, benchmark kind of thing for the Android version.
Flagship.
So I thought, okay, yeah, what kind of flagship? So I thought Nexus 7 might be that, and they might just not do any new Nexus phone and just go all out with Keyline Pi. But there are strong rumors suggesting that they will announce it next month, because it will be a year, as you said. So yeah,
Well, what we
it could be.
heard, basically, the way Google's done it the past 2 years, or maybe 2-3 years, is with the Nexus 1, they started off a couple of years ago, then a year later. They've just been doing it every year, every October or November, with a new phone. And they started off with the 7-inch tablet, the Nexus 7, this year in June, July, was it?
End of June.
End of June, yeah. So we saw that, but hopefully we'll see the updated Galaxy Nexus. Who do you think is going to manufacture it in terms of like companies?
I mean, there's been a rumor today, like this article on AndroidandMe.com says that it could be based on the HTC Droid Incredible X, so that would suggest HTC as a manufacturer,
Yeah.
and that would be quite interesting because that's like they're returning to the roots with the original Nexus one.
Yeah.
So.
But the thing is that Google, the way that they just completely bought out Motorola, I think that's what they did. They acquired Motorola. Maybe they're going to use the whole of Motorola's, because they've got the design team, they've got the manufacturing team, and they've got all the power there. So maybe they won't go with Samsung this year because they've got Motorola recently, so they could do that.
I mean, it could be Asus and LG as well, because I mean they've got a partnership with Asus for the Nexus 7 already, and it's been selling quite well. So they could, and Asus has some pretty decent phones as well.
Yeah.
So they could do LG. I don't know. They could as well, but I'm not too keen on LG. I don't
No,
like the user interface.
LG is more. When you think of LG, you think of like TVs, because their phones,
Fridges and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but when their phones, they started off terrible with like the LG Cookie, and then God knows what happened to them. They started using Symbian. They tried their own OS for 1 or 2 phones, and it was just a nightmare. And even though their phones are nice, they're not really as good as the competition.
Which one's LG?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just, I don't know, the design, like they're more squarish and stuff. Like they don't really, come up with unique concepts. It's just like been the same sort of candy bar design as it has
Earlier
been
in
at
the
beginning.
year, the LG Prada. Not sure if you saw that, but I got to have a look, and it's a nice phone. It's just very slow when you compare it to the other products that you can get now, and even at the time, there were so many better products that you can get. So there you go.
I mean, there was rumors of LG launching some like killer device, like S3 killer device on quad core. I'm not sure what happened with that. I think it was the LG Optimus G or something.
Yeah, I think that's still in development, or it's going to come out very soon.
I mean, that looks quite impressive if it actually turns out to be legit with the specs and stuff, but I don't know. LG's still kind of behind HTC and Samsung, who I'd say are like leading the Android world.
Going back to the next Nexus, which is what we're meant to be talking about, actually. I mean, we've got some specs here I'm going to read out. We have got the rumoured specs for the next Nexus. We've got the specs of the Galaxy S3 and also the Galaxy Nexus. So since they're all, I guess it's going to be a Samsung product, but what we can see here is the specs of the Galaxy Nexus. Its model name is the GT-i9 250. The Galaxy S3 is the GT-i9 300. And the next Nexus is the GT-i9 260. So the 250 was the Galaxy Nexus. Comparing the screen, it's exactly the same as the Galaxy Nexus, except the original Galaxy Nexus is a 4.65-inch Super AMOLED, whereas the next one is a 4.65-inch Super AMOLED HD. The processor's been improved, and this is all rumoured, so we don't know if it's going to be official or not, but the specs, we can see the processor on the original is 1.2 gigahertz dual-core A9, whereas the next one will be hopefully a 1.5 dual-core A9. The camera will be upgraded from 5 to 8 megapixels. The front-facing camera will be upgraded from 1.3 to 1.9, the same as the Galaxy S3. The storage will be just 16 gigabytes locked, same as the original one, whereas the Galaxy S3 has 16, 32, and 64. And this will be the first Nexus, I think, at least the first Galaxy Nexus variant to have an SD card storage. So what do you think about that?
It's quite interesting specs, but I don't know. I mean, I found this article which is came out today. It's got slightly different specs.
Yeah.
So they're calling it the Google Nexus 5. They're saying it's going to have a 5-inch 1080p display, which is kind of interesting because I thought that with the 5-inch thing, the whole Samsung started that with the whole Note thing. So it could catch on, it could not. We'll see. But it says that it's going to have a quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 processor, 12 megapixel rear camera, 2 megapixel front-facing camera, 2,500 milliamp hour battery, so that should give a lot of usage.
Yeah.
And for the storage, you said that your rumors said 16. This one says 64. So I mean, that's definitely a bump up.
Yeah, this one was published on The Verge, August 21st, but your one is different though.
Yeah, this one just came out today on AndroidandMe.com, 24th September. So
is this the one where it's going to be based on the HTC Droid X, or is it a different one?
Yes, that article.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the specs completely different in this one though, compared to the one that I've been having a look at. I mean, 64 gigs is just overkill, especially for an Android device like that, because it's just going to be a phone.
But you never know, because if the camera's really good and you start taking loads of pictures and videos with it, then it's going to accumulate fast, so you'll need the extra storage. Especially if they don't have an SD slot, then 64 will be more than enough, really.
Yeah, that's true. I think these rumoured specs from August, I think that would be pretty much on the verge of perfect. The display has been improved. I wouldn't be able to believe it if they made a proper full 1080p display, because the only one that you can get a proper 1080p display is on the Oppo Find 5.
Yeah, that phone is really impressive.
Yeah.
That's 441 pixel per inch.
Yeah.
That is
It's
amazing.
a Super Retina display.
Yeah.
So that's the first phone with a 1080p display that we know of. But 5-inch, that's too much. I mean, I could understand it on the first Galaxy Note and the Galaxy Note 2. The first one was 5.3 inch. The latest one, the Galaxy Note 2, is 5.5. The first one was just too big to use. And, I mean, the Galaxy Nexus, the original one, with the 4.65, that was just a perfect size, especially for the stock Android and the way it ran apps really well. And it didn't, it wasn't too much of a victim of fragmentation.
Yeah, it's true. 4.65 is really that sweet spot for size. I think if they're going to make it bigger, 5-inch I think will be too much. 4.8 on the S3 works really well.
Yeah.
So they could go with that.
I think 4.8 would be the maximum they would want to use, because no one, I mean, for a consumer, when it goes above 4.7, 4.8, it's just too big. There's too much space, and there's just too much to concentrate on.
Yeah, it's true. I don't see them really going ahead more than 4.8. It's going to be a bad move on their part, I reckon.
Yeah. So we're coming up to 23 minutes. We wanted to keep this one to under half an hour, unlike the last one, which went over a little. We wanted to keep it to 25 minutes. So I reckon we should end it here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, should we just round off?
So we're going to round off. So we started off talking about the rumoured, well, not the rumoured. We started off talking about the iPod Touch 5th Gen, and a little about the iPhone 5, how they compare, what would be better to get. So, and I did actually do a My Thoughts article just the past week on the 18th of September, so a week after the announcement. So that's pretty cool. And then we talked about the rumoured next Nexus the past 10 minutes or so. So I'd like to give a big thanks to a good friend of mine on the internet, Purav. He does videos on his PD Tech HD YouTube channel. He does reviews of mobile phones, accessories, PC accessories, stuff like that. And he also has a website, techcomesfirst.com. Both links, or all the links, I guess, will be in the description. You can check him out on Twitter at PDTalkingTech and at PDTechHD. I'm Yoni from Geek Slam. You can follow me at GSYoni on Twitter, and obviously the links to all my stuff will be in the description. So, Parav, is there anything you want to say?
No, that's it. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
That's
it was
all right.
quite fun, and we discussed good stuff. So, yeah, thank you once again.
Yeah, maybe you can be a guest in a future episode of the podcast.
Right, sure.
So, I guess
sounds good.
we're going to have to stop recording now. Thanks, everyone. Please hit the subscribe button for the Geek Slam podcast channel if you want to keep updated with future podcasts. Also, share it if you think anyone's going to be interested in the 5th gen iPod Touch or the next Nexus. And, yep. Thanks for watching or listening. See you next time. Bye.
Stop recording? Okay.